There comes a moment in every person's life when exhaustion is no longer physical. It's spiritual. It's emotional. It's the deep tiredness that comes from giving and giving and giving to someone who only takes. Many people don't realize this, but narcissists don't survive on love. They survive on attention, on reaction, on your energy. And the most powerful thing you will ever do is not argue, not explain, not prove your worth. The most powerful thing you can do is stop feeding them. Today, I want you to witness something rare. A woman who decides right here, right now, that she will no longer be the source of someone else's power. This isn't revenge. This isn't bitterness. This is clarity. For years, she thought love meant endurance. She believed that staying quiet, staying patient, staying hopeful would eventually change them. But then she learned a life-altering truth: you cannot heal someone who benefits from your pain. So she begins a 25-minute exercise that changes everything. For the first few minutes, she becomes aware of how her body reacts when the phone buzzes, aware of the tension in her chest when their name appears, aware of how much of her day revolves around managing someone else's emotions. Awareness is the first withdrawal of energy. Then she stops reacting. No defending, no explaining, no emotional speeches. Silence becomes her strength. In the next phase, she redirects her focus, not outward, but inward. She asks herself one life-changing question: what part of me believes I deserve this? And that question doesn't shame her. It frees her, because once you identify the wound, you stop mistaking manipulation for love. In the final minutes, she chooses herself without guilt. She breathes. She grounds herself. She reminds herself that love does not drain, confuse, or diminish. And something incredible happens. The narcissist loses interest, because without your energy, without your emotional reactions, without your explanations, they have nothing to feed on. And you begin to rise, not loudly, not dramatically, but powerfully. This is how freedom begins, not by changing them, but by choosing you. Narcissists do not survive on love or connection or partnership. They survive on emotional energy. This energy can look like affection, but it can also look like fear, anger, guilt, confusion, or even the need to explain yourself. Any reaction feeds them. When you respond emotionally, you are handing over power. Many people believe love can change a narcissist, but what actually happens is that love becomes fuel. The more you try to be understood, the more they feel in control. This is because narcissism is not about relationship. It is about dominance and validation. Every reaction you give teaches them how to access you. When you argue, they learn your triggers. When you cry, they learn your weaknesses. When you defend yourself, they learn how to keep you engaged. Even kindness can become supply when it is one-sided and unconditional. They do not crave peace. They crave attention. Positive or negative does not matter. Energy is energy. This is why ignoring logic does not work with them. This is why explaining your pain often leads to more pain. You are speaking from your heart while they are listening for leverage. They are not moved by empathy the way healthy people are. They are moved by how much influence they have over your emotional state. Once you understand this, everything begins to change. Stopping the supply is not cruel. It is necessary. It is not punishment. It is protection. When you stop feeding them energy, you are not playing games. You are stepping out of one. This does not mean you become cold or unkind. It means you become intentional. You respond instead of react. You choose silence instead of self-betrayal. The hardest part is recognizing how deeply conditioned you may be to respond. Many people were taught that love means fixing, that silence means abandonment, that setting boundaries means being selfish. A narcissist exploits these beliefs. They push buttons that were installed long before you met them. That is why walking away feels confusing at first. Your nervous system is addicted to the cycle. But here is the truth. Peace feels unfamiliar when chaos has been normalized. When you stop reacting, there may be discomfort. You may feel guilt. You may feel fear. This does not mean you are doing something wrong. It means you are detoxing from emotional manipulation. Just like any withdrawal process, it feels uncomfortable before it feels liberating. When you stop feeding a narcissist your energy, they may escalate at first. They may provoke. They may guilt you. They may suddenly become kind. This is not change, this is desperation. Stay grounded, stay steady. Do not justify, do not defend. Your calm is your boundary. Over time, something remarkable happens. Without your reactions, the dynamic collapses. The power imbalance dissolves. They lose interest because there is nothing left to consume. And you gain clarity. You begin to hear your own thoughts again. Your body relaxes. Your confidence returns slowly but surely. This process is not about becoming emotionless. It is about becoming selective. You are learning that your energy is sacred. Not everyone deserves access to it. Love that costs you your peace is not love. Connection that drains you is not connection. You were never meant to be a source of supply for someone else. When you stop feeding a narcissist your energy, you are not losing anything real. You are reclaiming yourself. You are choosing self-respect over survival mode. And that choice changes everything. Awareness is the moment the fog begins to lift. Before awareness, there is confusion, self-doubt, and constant self-questioning. You sense that something is wrong, but you cannot name it. You feel drained, yet you blame yourself. You feel hurt, yet you minimize your pain. This is how emotional manipulation keeps its power, by keeping you disconnected from your own experience. Awareness reconnects you to yourself. The first level of awareness is noticing your body. Your body always knows before your mind does. The tight chest, the shallow breath, the sudden anxiety, when a message arrives, the exhaustion, after a conversation, these are not random reactions. They are signals. When you begin to observe these signals without judging them, you take your first step back into your power. You are no longer ignoring what your body has been trying to tell you. The next level of awareness is recognizing patterns, not isolated incidents, but repeated behaviors. The cycle becomes clear. Charm followed by withdrawal, affection followed by criticism, the promises followed by disappointment. When you step back and observe the pattern, you stop taking each moment personally. You see that it is not about you failing. It is about a predictable dynamic designed to keep you emotionally invested. Awareness also means noticing how much mental space this person occupies, how often you replay conversations in your head, how much time you spend preparing what to say or worrying about how they feel. When someone has this level of access to your thoughts, they are already controlling your energy. Awareness brings that realization into the light. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Another critical layer of awareness is understanding your own role in the cycle without self-blame. This is not about judging yourself. It is about honesty. You may realize that you stayed because you hoped, because you believed in potential, because you feared being alone, because you were taught that endurance equals love. Awareness does not shame you for this. It gives you compassion. It helps you see that you were doing the best you could with what you knew at the time. As awareness deepens, your reactions begin to slow. You pause before responding. You observe instead of immediately engaging. This pause is powerful. In that space, you regain choice. You are no longer acting from habit or fear. You are acting from clarity. Even a few seconds of awareness can interrupt years of conditioning. This is where freedom quietly begins, not with confrontation, not with dramatic exits, but with seeing clearly. Awareness changes your internal landscape before anything changes externally. You stop arguing with reality. You stop trying to convince someone to be different. You start accepting what is instead of what you wish it could be. At first, this clarity can feel painful. There is grief in seeing the truth, grief for the time spent, grief for the version of the relationship you hoped for, but this grief is clean. It is honest. And unlike confusion, it heals. Awareness may hurt, but it does not harm. With awareness, you begin to trust yourself again. You stop asking others to validate what you feel. You stop doubting your perception. You realize that your emotions were not the problem. They were the messenger. Awareness turns that message into wisdom. This is why awareness is the first real act of self-love, because when you see clearly, you cannot continue to abandon yourself. And when you stop abandoning yourself, the cycle loses its grip. Awareness is not passive, it is an awakening. And once it begins, everything else follows. Silence is often misunderstood as weakness, but in reality, it is one of the strongest choices a person can make. When you have spent a long time explaining yourself, defending your feelings, and trying to be understood, silence can feel terrifying. It feels like giving up your voice. But true silence is not the absence of power. It is the presence of self-control. A narcissistic dynamic thrives on engagement. Every word you offer becomes material. Every explanation becomes a doorway. Every emotional response gives them information about where to press next. When you speak from pain, they listen for advantage. Silence closes those doors. It removes the stage. It interrupts the performance. Choosing silence does not mean you have nothing to say. It means you are choosing not to say it to someone who will misuse it. There is wisdom in knowing where your truth will be respected and where it will be weaponized. Silence is discernment in action. At first, silence feels unnatural. Your mind races. You want to clarify, you want to be fair. You want to make sure they understand your intention. This urge comes from conditioning. Many people were taught that being quiet means being wrong, that self-expression must be constant to be valid. Silence challenges that belief. When you remain silent, something shifts internally. You begin to notice how often you spoke to manage someone else rather than to express yourself. You see how much of your energy went into calming storms you did not create. Silence gives that energy back to you. Silence is also a mirror. When you stop reacting, you allow the other person to reveal themselves. Without your emotional labor, their behavior becomes clearer. You see whether there is accountability or manipulation, whether there is respect or entitlement. Silence exposes truth without confrontation. This does not mean the other person will suddenly become calm. In many cases, they will become louder. They may provoke. They may accuse you of being cold or distant. This is not because silence is wrong. It is because silence removes their control. When someone benefits from your reactions, your calm feels like a threat. Remaining silent during these moments requires grounding. You remind yourself that you do not owe access to your inner world. You do not owe explanations to someone who has consistently dismissed them. Silence is not avoidance when it is paired with awareness. It is a boundary. As time passes, silence begins to feel less heavy. You realize that not every thought needs to be spoken. Not every feeling needs to be justified. You start listening to yourself instead of monitoring someone else. This internal quiet brings clarity. Silence also teaches self-trust. You stop seeking validation for your choices. You stop rehearsing conversations that will never lead to understanding. You realize that peace does not require agreement. It requires alignment with yourself. This kind of silence is not passive. It is intentional. It is the choice to step out of chaos without announcing your exit. It is strength without spectacle. It is dignity without explanation. When you choose silence, you are not disappearing. You are reappearing to yourself. You are learning that your presence does not need to be loud to be powerful. You are learning that boundaries can exist without words. Over time, silence creates space for healing, space for clarity, space for your nervous system to rest. In that space, you remember who you were before the constant tension, before the need to explain, before the cycle. Silence does not mean you have lost your voice. It means you are saving it for places where it will be honored. And that choice is one of the deepest forms of self-respect. Self-reflection is where the real shift begins because it turns your attention inward instead of outward. For a long time, your focus may have been on their moods, their reactions, their approval, and their version of events. This constant outward focus slowly disconnects you from yourself. Self-reflection brings you back home. This process is not about blaming yourself for what happened. It is about understanding yourself with honesty and compassion. You begin by asking gentle questions, not questions meant to shame you, but questions meant to reveal truth. You ask why you stayed when you were hurting. You ask what you hoped would change. You ask what part of you believed love required sacrifice of self. As you reflect, you may realize that familiar patterns played a role. Perhaps you learned early in life to earn love by being accommodating. Perhaps you were praised for being patient and strong while your needs were overlooked. Perhaps chaos felt familiar and calm felt empty. These realizations are not accusations, they are insights. They help you see that your choices were shaped long before this relationship began. Self-reflection also helps you separate responsibility. You take responsibility for your boundaries, but not for someone else's behavior. You recognize that you did not cause manipulation and you could not fix it. This distinction is powerful. It releases you from carrying guilt that was never yours. When you reflect honestly, you start noticing where you ignored your intuition. Those moments when something felt off, but you explained it away. Those times when your body reacted, but your mind dismissed it. Reflection teaches you to trust those signals again. You stop seeing them as weakness and start seeing them as guidance. This inward work can feel uncomfortable. It requires you to sit with emotions you may have avoided: sadness, anger, grief, disappointment. These feelings are not signs of failure, they are signs of awakening. When you allow yourself to feel them without judgment, they begin to move through you instead of staying stuck. Self-reflection also reveals your values. You remember what matters to you: peace, honesty, mutual respect, emotional safety. You see clearly how far the relationship drifted from these values. This clarity strengthens your resolve. You no longer need to convince yourself that leaving or detaching is justified. You know it is aligned. As this awareness deepens, you begin to respond differently in real time. You notice red flags sooner. You pause instead of over-explaining. You listen to your discomfort instead of overriding it. This is how cycles are broken, not by changing others, but by changing your relationship with yourself. Reflection does not mean living in the past. It means learning from it. You take the lessons forward without carrying the pain. You understand that growth does not erase what happened, but it transforms how it lives inside you. Through self-reflection, you reclaim your narrative. You stop seeing yourself someone who endured something and start seeing yourself as someone who learned something. This shift restores dignity and self-respect. Most importantly, reflection reconnects you to your worth. You remember that you are not here to be tolerated or drained or diminished. You are here to be valued and met and honored. This knowing becomes your new foundation. When you understand yourself, you stop repeating what hurts you. You stop confusing intensity with intimacy. You stop mistaking attention for love. Self-reflection closes the door on old patterns and opens space for healthier connections. This is why self-reflection is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the quiet work that changes everything from the inside out. Choosing yourself is not a single decision. It is a series of quiet moments where you stop abandoning your needs to keep someone else comfortable. For a long time, you may have been trained to believe that choosing yourself is selfish or cruel or unloving. This belief keeps many people trapped. But the truth is, choosing yourself is the foundation of every healthy relationship you will ever have. When you begin to choose yourself, the first thing you notice is guilt. This guilt does not mean you are doing something wrong. It means you are breaking a pattern. You are stepping out of a role that benefited others more than it benefited you. Guilt is often the emotional residue of people pleasing and emotional conditioning. It fades as your nervous system learns safety in self-loyalty. Choosing yourself means honoring your limits even when they are not understood. It means saying no without a long explanation. It means stepping back when something feels wrong, even if you cannot fully articulate why. This kind of choice builds self-trust. Each time you listen to yourself, you strengthen that trust. At first, choosing yourself can feel lonely. You may miss the intensity, the familiarity, the sense of being needed. But being needed is not the same as being valued. When you stop providing constant emotional labor, the noise quiets, and you begin to feel your own presence again. This solitude is not emptiness, it is space. In that space, you rediscover what brings you peace. Simple moments feel richer. Your body relaxes, your thoughts slow down. You begin to notice how much of your energy was being consumed by tension and anticipation. Choosing yourself returns that energy to you. This choice also changes your standards. You become less available for chaos. You stop negotiating your boundaries. You realize that love does not require endurance of disrespect. You stop waiting for potential and start responding to reality. This clarity protects you. When you consistently choose yourself, others adjust or fall away. This can be painful, but it is honest. Those who relied on your self-abandonment will resist your growth. Those who respect you will adapt. Either way, you gain alignment. Choosing yourself does not mean you stop caring. It means you care without self-sacrifice. You can be compassionate without being consumed. You can be kind without being depleted. This balance is the mark of emotional maturity. Over time, this choice reshapes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who must earn love. You begin to see yourself as someone who is inherently worthy of it. This shift changes how you show up everywhere. In conversations and decisions and relationships, you become more present because you are no longer split between your needs and someone else's demands. You become more confident because your actions match your values. You become calmer because you are no longer at war with yourself. Choosing yourself also heals generational patterns. When you stop tolerating what hurts you, you change what you model. You show that self-respect is not arrogance, it is responsibility. This path is not dramatic. There may be no closure conversation, no apology, no grand ending, but there is peace, there is steadiness, there is relief. When you choose yourself consistently, the power game ends. Manipulation loses access. Chaos loses its audience. You no longer need to prove anything. Your life becomes quieter and truer. In the end, choosing yourself is not about winning or losing. It is about returning to yourself and staying there. That is the real freedom. In the end, this journey is not about the other person at all. It is about you coming back to yourself after giving too much of your energy away. It is about seeing clearly, choosing consciously, and honoring your own worth without needing permission. When you stop feeding what drains you and start nourishing what strengthens you, everything begins to shift. There is power in awareness, strength in silence, healing in reflection, and freedom in self-choice. None of these require confrontation or explanation. They require honesty and courage. The courage to sit with discomfort long enough to find peace on the other side. You may not see instant results, and that is okay. Real change happens quietly. It happens when you no longer feel the need to prove your pain or defend your boundaries. It happens when your nervous system finally rests and your heart feels lighter. This is how cycles end. Not through force, but through clarity. Not through revenge, but through self-respect. When you choose yourself consistently, you step out of survival mode and into a life that feels grounded, calm, and true. And that is the greatest victory of all.